Hey, don't skip this. You see, the app I'm gonna present to you, well, it is going to change. I'm not saying that it's gonna change in looks, but it is gonna change in features. There's gonna be more added. You see, there's a roadmap, users can vote, users can suggest certain features get introduced into the app, and the app is made by just one person, one developer that is very dedicated, very responsive, and he has huge plans for this app. I'm making this video because I really want to get the word out, and I think a lot of people are gonna want to help in growing this app. Hello there, my dear viewers, and welcome to haQ. In this docutorial, we're having a look at Sand and its developer.
My name is Matteo Caldari. I'm a mobile developer. I've been developing mobile apps since 2010. In the last years, I'm focusing on music apps. So actually not only mobile, but also desktop apps. As a freelancer, I'm working with companies to develop the products. Before the iPhone came out, I was starting developing apps for Mac, basically. Yeah, when the first iPhone came out, it completely changed the way people used to think about apps. It became like a huge thing. Apps were brought from just a computer in your house to everywhere. It was very, very interesting to jump on that kind of technology. Plus, developing apps for the iPhone was much simpler than Mac apps, especially at the beginning, because we had just one screen size, fewer possibilities compared to what it is now, and compared to Mac apps, then it was really easy, so to say.
So what is Sand? Well, Sand is a clip-based MIDI sequencer that hosts AUV3 plugins like synthesizers and effects. Now, there is a clear vision behind Sand, and I'll let the developer tell you all about that, but that path he wants to take is not clearly cut into stone. It can be affected by you, the user, and if you want to find out more, just stick with me and we'll get to that. Now, as the app is right now, it feels almost bare bones, but it's been made like that intentionally because it also makes the app very uncluttered. So it's so easy to get into and so easy to get stuff started with it. It does support external MIDI controllers, but it has also been designed so that you can work directly from just the screen. And there is this neat function for when you want to map controls from inside instruments and effects. And I'll show you that later on. Alright, so we will go into Sand and how it works and everything, but before we do that, I just wanted to show you what Matteo said when I asked him about Sand, why he wanted to make the app, and how long he's been working on it.
I always wanted to make a sequencer. Yeah, the first one I built was something like 15 years ago on Linux or something like that, even before I started developing iPhone apps or Mac apps. And then a few years ago, I actually wanted one app which would work as I wanted. And I waited until, big companies finally implemented, I don't know, like MIDI support for this and that, or something like a host for plugins and so on. But yeah, I actually never got what I wanted. So I started making my own. I think the first sketches, I did them like 5 years ago, 2017. And then I basically left the idea for a while. And then in the last year, or maybe a few months, I said, okay, I will just do it now. And so it actually doesn't look at all like it used to be in the past. I switched ideas between like a timeline, and then I switched to clip-based sequencing because I myself was more like a linear timeline guy, and then I started experimenting with grid, and I totally like it. I think it totally makes sense.
The first time you open up Sand, you're going to be taken to the Sand folder within the iOS file browser. And here you can either load your previously saved projects or create new ones. So we're going to press Create Project, and when it does that, it creates an untitled project. And as the app is right now, you cannot change the name of the project from within the project window. We have to go back to the browser by tapping on the X and just long pressing on a file like you do normally in the file browser, select Switch Name, and then just give it a new name. And as soon as you've done that, there you go, right there with a new name. Now to add a track, we just simply press here, and here we have some track controls. Now these boxes here are your clips, and in the clips you can record MIDI notes with either an external keyboard or with the built-in internal keyboard, and you can reach it by tapping right down here. Now this one can be resized upwards, and you can also customize it by adding more notes to your keyboard or less notes, and you can also switch out the scale for it. If we go back to the track view, then we can see that we also have a solo function here, and we have a mute function here, and a recording arming function here. And then we have the track volume control over there, and also the panning control over here. Now, these circles here is where you load your AUV3 instruments in the big one, and also AUV3 effects in the small circle. And if we start by just tapping in here, we get the browser. Here you can switch between FX and instruments, and you can just scroll through the list, but I hate doing that. So I scroll down until I get the search box, and I just type in what synthesizer I want. I'll do the same thing down here if I press on the little one, and I just scroll down and select Saturn because I love that plugin, and there we go. Now, you can easily duplicate a track with all of its clips and everything by long pressing on the track view, and then you get this menu. Here you can duplicate, you can save an entire track as a template, and you can also recolor it. I'm gonna long press again and press duplicate, and I'm gonna also change the color on this one. So here we now have two empty tracks, but both of them have the Trooper synthesizer loaded and also the Saturn plugin. Now, if you want to view the plugins themselves, you can just simply tap on the circles here and it will take you to them. So if we begin by opening up this one here, we get to Trooper synthesizer. And all of the effects will always load below the actual instrument. And you can scroll down to it by scrolling down here on the side. Now, if you are in the track view and you, for instance, tap on the effect slot, then it will take you to it directly. And I think that's a very neat feature. We're going to start by recording just a little line just to show you what happens to the notes and what you can do with them. So I'm going to tap on one of these clips, and by doing that, I'm priming it for recording. Next, I'm going to open up the keyboard, and now I just simply need to tap record, and it will count in for us. And there we have our notes recorded. Now, maybe you caught it. I did a little mistake, and there's actually one note that shouldn't be there. And if we want to edit that, we can just simply long press on the clip, and here we get a new menu. We can copy, paste, and delete a clip, and we can also edit it. And so if I press that, we get to the piano roll. And there we can see that little note that I added that I don't want there. Now, by pinching and depinching, you can zoom in and out. And I'm just going to select this note by tapping on it and press delete over here with the paper basket, and there it's gone. Now I can either take this and I can drag it back to here, or I could just simply quantize all of the notes if I wanted to by just simply tapping the quantization option, and it quantizes all of the notes, as you can see. You can, of course, if you wanted to, just long press and get a little selection box like this. And when you've selected notes, you can also press this icon here, which allows you to basically set the velocity setting for notes. Now, as you can see, you have some undo options and redo options over here. And then you can also set the quantization for the track up here. And over here, you can set up how many bars you want the clip to be. And when it comes to editing options for MIDI notes, that's it. That's what you get right now. And I know it's not much, but it will change for the future. And with the amount of tools already there, you have enough basic functionality to start building track ideas. And that's exactly what I kept doing here. I just paused and took 5 minutes and just started adding tracks, instruments, and effects, the same process I've already shown you how to do. And I ended up building this little thing here. Now, the biggest strength of Sand is that it is a clip-based sequencer, so it's a perfect tool to perform with. Just record stuff on the fly and then just trigger clips, and they all, of course, lock to the tempo. Now, when it comes to controlling stuff inside instruments and effects, there's a neat little feature inside Sand I want to show you next. But first, I just want to quickly highlight that there is no song mode in Sand. You can't just link clips together and build a song that way. But there probably will be a song mode in the future. I know this because I've already seen the developer himself suggest it over at the roadmap. So if you want quick access to certain features inside synthesizers or some of these plugins, you can actually get access to them on a page right there. Now, as the app is right now, whatever controls you add are tied to that channel. But in the future, Matteo will introduce a global channel where you can take controls from various instruments and effects from various channels and put them all on a global page. But right now, this page is per channel. So if we make sure to select the lead channel, whatever controls we add now are gonna be from the lead channel. And we press the plus sign here, we can now search for whatever controller we want to add. So as you can see, we've got all of the Trooper controls right here. And if we scroll down, we have Saturn controls over here and Timeless controls if we go even further down, all the way down. Oh my God, there's so many of them. What's going on? It is really nice to be able to search for the controls you want. So if you know what controls you want, you just drag down until you get the search box and you can type it in here. Now, in this case, I want to control the filter cutoff for Trooper synthesizer. So I'm gonna go here, select the filter, and as you can see, a control pops up and it accurately shows the state of that control as it is right now inside the app. So if I press done here and we open up this plugin, we can see the control of the frequency right there. And if I do this, we can see it moving with it. So this is really nice. Let's add another control. I want to add something from Timeless 3. In this case, I want to add the feedback. So I'm going here and I'm just going to search for feed. And here are the ones for Timeless 3. So I'm just going to select the feedback and there we go. If I close down the keyboard, I have the feedback control for Timeless 3. Now, what can be confusing here is if you've got many of them, you start losing track of what controls do what. Well, in this case, it actually says Trooper right there, but here it only says feedback. Well, if you want to rename them, you just long press on them and then you press rename. Timeless 3 feedback, like that. And there we go. Now we know that this is the feedback for Timeless 3. And this is such a nice feature to have. And let me show you something else. You can actually scale this up and you can add a bunch of these controls. And that way you never have to actually enter the plugins themselves to actually change anything. You can just do it from these screens. But like I said at the beginning there, these are tied to the channel. So if I jump to another channel, we can see that the controls are no longer here because those controls we just mapped are just for the controls inside of this channel. And so we can use this to perform. Now, there are some more stuff here, and if we go down to this control again, we can see that there are actually 3 dots here. And so if we scroll to the side, we get to the BPM and metronome controls. For the BPM, we can set the BPM in this list right here, or we can tap tempo. Now on the right side here, we have the metronome controls. So basically the volume control for the metronome and settings for how the metronome actually works. So if you set it to off mode, it's completely off. If you set it to record, you will only hear the metronome once you record something. And if you turn it on, it will be on no matter what you do. Whether you're playing or recording, you'll always hear it. I usually set it to record and that's it. Now, if we scroll one more page, what we have here right now is a sampler, and it's a very, very rudimentary sampler. So if you wanted to record your performance, for instance, you could just press record here and then just press play. And there you go, you have a recording of your performance. Now, what you can do with this is basically just play it back if you want to, or you can just delete it, or you can export it. And the way it works right now is that when you export it, you will get a single track every time. But as you can see, Matteo is preparing for stem support. So even if you choose export separate tracks, when we do that and we export it to audio share, we only get this one track. But in the future, this will be a stem support where you actually get all of the tracks individually exported.
I like to play guitar, I like to play synths. And so some years ago, I wanted to have like a DAW-less setup because after hours of programming, I don't want to look at the screen anymore when I'm making music. And so I started getting more into like hardware synths, but then I realized software makes things much easier. And also sound design wise, I like to work with software very much. And so I always wanted a hybrid thing. That's also one reason why I'm building Sand, because at the end I want something which you can use just tapping the screen, but also completely without an interaction with the screen. I find it really annoying if you have to quickly change a volume or something like that. You have to get in the screen where you have the volume slider, and sometimes it gets in the way of creativity, I think. And if you have like a MIDI controller setup, which you can use for everything, then that would be the best for me, I think.
Lastly, there is the whole MIDI aspect of Sand, and the way that it works right now is that all of the external MIDI controller settings that you do, well, they're separate from the internal control settings, so they really have nothing to do with the control stuff that you do over here. And you have to set up those external MIDI controls somewhere else, and where you do that is up here. So we press this little icon here, and here we can see inputs, controllers, Bluetooth, and settings. Now, if we go into settings, we can set up the regular stuff such as preferred sample rate, buffer size, and you can even switch out the app icon for the app. Let's open up the settings again and go to inputs. Now, before you map anything, you have to make sure that your MIDI controllers are, of course, connected to your iPad or your iPhone, and then you select them inside Sand. Now, if your controllers are connected via USB, then they will just simply pop up in this list of MIDI ins and outs. And all you have to do is to tap on them to select them, and then you can go on to mapping stuff using those controllers. However, if you're using Bluetooth MIDI controllers, you might have to connect them up in the app first. And you can do that in the Bluetooth connections, which you can go to from this little icon here, or you can also reach it from the menu and go to Bluetooth. Once you have selected the controllers, they are ready to be used for any type of MIDI mappings. So now that my Bluetooth controllers are connected, I can now select them inside the inputs menu. And before we start MIDI mapping anything, I want to show you something neat here. You see, if your MIDI controller happens to be a keyboard MIDI controller, then a blue frame will show up around the selected track. Alright, so I think we're ready to do some MIDI mappings here, and I want to map some transport controls. I want to be able to control record, stop, and play, for instance, with my other controller here. As we can see, we've got those controls right there. And the way you do that is by going in here and going to controllers. Right now I've got something mapped, but I'm just gonna press delete on this one and add a new one. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna choose a device and I'm gonna choose the Nano Control Studio Bluetooth. I'm not gonna choose anything for the output, but I'm gonna go into mapping. And inside mapping, I'm gonna map the play button. And the easiest way of doing this is by using learn. I'm gonna press learn, press play, and there we go. That's now learned. And we go back here, we go to stop, press learn and stop, and then go back here, press record and learn and record, and there we go. This is how easy it is. And if we look down here, we even have track volume controls. And through the power of video editing, I have now mapped the volume controls for these 3 tracks to these 3 controllers here. I've also mapped the panning controls and the stop, play, and record. You saw me do those. If we wanted to change the volume here, it changes the volume. And yeah, that's very sweet. And even the panning and everything. And that's basically how easy it is. Now, if you actually check through the MIDI mapping list, there's a lot more that you can MIDI map, like track selecting, track arming, and so many things. And one of the things that I thought about was, hey, how about a launchpad controller? Because that makes sense to use with a clip-based sequencer, right? Well, it turns out that Sand doesn't have native support for it. So that is actually something I am going to suggest over at the roadmap.
So at the end, I want it to be like a complete app for building songs from 0 to 100%. But I don't want to make it bloated so that it's hard to use, difficult to use. I want it to be very easy to get on, but it should be very expandable. To be honest, I developed it thinking about my kind of workflow, but I don't know for how many people it would work. So the app has, at this point, maybe less features than other apps. It's on purpose because I wanted the app to be simple as first, and then to allow it to grow with more features as users use it and also suggest. So basically, I like this approach of having an open roadmap, and so people can just go to roadmap.getsand.app and basically vote or suggest features.
I highly recommend that you have a look at Sand. I absolutely am in love with the concept of this because we've wanted a clip-based sequencer on iOS for a long time, and there's been some attempts that haven't been too successful or haven't taken off for one reason or another. And here we have a new one in Sand. And I just want to make sure that this developer gets support from the community, especially the ones of you who are interested in clip-based sequencers, because this one has a lot of potential. And what's on the roadmap right now is gonna change the app for the future, and it's gonna add so many features. And Matteo even wants to turn this into a DAW. Yes, you heard that right. Matteo wants to turn this into a DAW in the end, and I found that out when I asked him about how he came up with the name for the app.
I was at the dentist on this very uncomfortable chair where the dentist just went through your teeth, and basically she started like sanding my teeth, and suddenly, okay, epiphany. You can play with sand, you can build stuff with sand, and so I thought it was, I don't know, a funny name. It's definitely not an acronym, but it should be like sequencer for audio plugins. When it's gonna be a DAW, then it's gonna have the D at the end.
Yeah, it's gonna be great. This is amazing, and it needs support, your support. I have linked to the app down in the description and also in the pinned comment, so you can go check it out. I've also linked to the place where you can vote for and or suggest features for Sand. Thank you so much for watching this docutorial. It's the type of content I like making the most, and it takes the most amount of time to make. And so I'm really happy that you're watching it, and if you're watching it to the end, you're amazing. If you want to support me in a financial way, then why don't you check out my preset packs for Timeless 3 and also Trooper. If you don't want to do that, I've got a PayPal and Patreon. And if you don't want to do that, you can check out my music, and if you don't want to do any of it, that's fine too. As usual, I wish you a very productive week. Now go finger all of your stuff and have a lot of fun doing it.